Welcome back to those of you who are returnees, and welcome to any of those of you who are new this time. Thanks for the positive feedback on the last one. I hope people find this one useful as well. It did mention in the registration, it is important to have watched the first webinar, because I will be referring to some procedures in there. In this one. If you haven't watched it and you find something's not clear, then just go back and watch the first one and you'll see what I'm referring to in there. There are a number of handouts posted, and this time I have posted pictures of the code cards that you'll gradually be making with your student or your child, whoever you're working with. You may notice that for the first webinar, someone was kind enough to make them into sort of printable sheets. Okay, that's why they're there for some of the first webinar. I don't have printable sheets, so that's why what you're seeing in the pictures is simply my handmade ones. All right. Oh, I'm having trouble advancing my page here. Okay. I wonder if I'm going to have to stop sharing. I'm sorry about this, and go back and get another. Oh, there we go. Now it's working. Okay. So as I said in my first webinar, remember, English is complex, but it's not crazy. And the purpose of tonight's webinar is to try and teach you about a somewhat more complex layer of phonics. Now, once again, please don't go away saying that Jan McLean says the only thing you need to learn for reading is, or need to teach children about for reading, is phonics. That's not true. There are many other layers, morphology being another substantial one, but phonics is an important starting place.
Sorry, Jan, to interrupt, but I just wondered if you wanted to do the polls we had at the beginning.
Oh, I'd completely forgotten.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay, that's okay.
Can you just run those now?
Yes, like we'll do that. Okay, how do I do that? Okay, here we go. This, we're asking everybody just to indicate if they're a parent or educator, and if an educator or other professional, they could answer that for us. Okay, I guess we've got most of the answers there. So just, I'm hoping everyone can see that. You can see that, Jan?
I can see that, yes.
Yeah, great. Okay, and then we have another question. So we have a lot of parents and administrators and educators as well. So share results, can do that. There we go.
Great.
And then I'm going to move on somehow to the next one. Here we go. So just a question about where people are living. Okay, I think we have everything. I'll stop that, share the results. I'm just trying to copy a bit of this out here. Okay, and then we have one more question about the age of students that people are working with, or children. Either their own child or working as an educator. Okay, we'll end that. So we can see there's quite a broad range of H's here tonight. There we go. Okay.
Okay, that was great. Thanks. So having seen the poll results, I see that most people are parents. So I'll probably, the terminology I'm going to use is when you're working with your child, but clearly if you're a classroom teacher, it's going to be your student or students. And also just a note that although I will probably be speaking about things that are suitable for very young children, it's the same principles for older students as well. Okay, so back to this. So a second caveat, you will find some words that don't follow the rules that I'm going to tell you, and that's okay. The reason, so if I'm telling you that a letter combination makes a certain sound, or just makes one sound, what it really means is that that is true 95, 98, 99% of the time. And yes, you will find exceptions to them. But what we want to teach kids or students is what is the most common sound for letter combinations. And the other thing is that I'm going to also have the caveat that we're going to be looking at words of one syllable. Once you get into multisyllabic words, again, that's another layer that starts to be influenced by things like particularly morphology. Okay, so I'm going to keep my examples to one syllable words. One of the handouts that you have is a listing of all these aspects of complex phonics. And as you can see, there's quite a few bits to go through. I'm going to try and move through those and give you a little bit more explanation about them, but there is quite a bit written on the sheets. The only thing I'm not going to talk about right now is open and closed syllables. I'll simply demonstrate that to you in the second part. Okay, so blends. So blends are basically two consonants, and consonants are the letters that are not vowels, right? Or it may be a digraph and a consonant. They each still make their own sound in a word, but they blend a bit together, which makes them a little bit harder to hear. So if we look even in the text here, so at the beginning of this word, BL, that's a blend, two consonants side by side, but we still hear them. You can see that we also have, so we have blends at the beginnings of words. We also have blends at the ends of words, okay? And in this word, we actually have blends at the beginning and the ends of words. So once we start to add these blends to words, we move up from the three sounds we were working with in the last presentation. And we're using words that are 4 or 5 or even 6 sounds in them. Okay, and if we look down at this word strict, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sounds that children now have to hear. And therefore, because words with blends have more sounds in them than these little words like cat, it makes them somewhat more difficult for children to master. This is a listing of the beginning blends that exist in English. They're grouped here according to L blends, R blends, S blends, and you can see this SL could also be put over here, TW, and then these are some of these digraph blends. So these are all the blends that start words in English. These are all the blends that come at the ends of words, and then there are some that have 3 letters in them, okay? Now there's way too many blends to make those little code cards for them, like I showed you. Maybe you want to make some just for these 3-letter blends, but otherwise you're probably just going to build those blends on the single cards that you've had. Okay. Second thing is vowel teams. So these occur when 2 vowels go together and make a new sound. Previously, we talked about when 2 consonants went together, like S and H, and made a new sound. sh, that's a digraph. These vowel teams, we now have two vowels going together and making a new sound. Just like here, O and I go together to make a brand new sound, which is now oi, which exists in a word like oil. Sometimes in these vowel teams, it's actually a vowel and a consonant that's going together. We tend to lump them all under the term vowel teams, although clearly technically that's not true. One is a consonant in this case, or in this case, like IGH, it's one vowel and two more consonants. Some of these vowel teams make just one sound and some make more than one sound, and we'll be addressing that as we go ahead. An alternate term you might hear, some people call these vowel digraphs or complex code, okay, but it's just the idea that these combinations go together to make brand new sounds. So here's a listing of the vowel teams that make one sound in English, okay? And again, you have this on a handout. So I've given the letters and then a keyword here so you can hear it. So this is E, like inside of teeth. This is A, like inside of snail, all right? This is A, aw, identical sounds, I, oi, and oo, like in grew. Some less frequent combinations you'll see down here at the bottom. When I say less frequent, there just aren't that many words that, use the spelling of OE for O, like in toe. So these are your main ones that you want to concentrate on. There is also, when you're starting to teach your children about these sounds, there is also some information you can start to notice, and this relates to spelling, okay? Both of these patterns make the sound A. So if you encounter them in reading, you just say A. However, how do you know if you're spelling a word that has A, which one of these to use? We cannot always be certain, but in words like play, if you hear the A at the end of the word, you're going to choose this combination with the Y, okay? Same thing, you would never choose that for an end combination. So if you have a child who spells play, P-L-A-I, what you can say to them is not, oh, golly, English is so difficult, oh, that's not the right one, use the other one. What you can say is, AI does make A, good listening, but you know what? We never use this one at the end. You have to use your other pattern at the end. So you can give them some real direction on that. In the middle of words, we can't give that direction. There's a lot of variability, but often at these end ones we can. And the patterns that like to come at the end are the ones that end with Y's and W's, okay? They love to be your last choice. We see it again with these two. They both make oi, but which one is preferred for the end? O-Y. Okay. We have in English what are called R-controlled vowels, which means that when the letter R comes after a single vowel, it no longer makes its short sound. It's or Oscar, Eddie, Apple, Itchy, Upper, but they become R-controlled and make a brand new sound. And these three, E-R, I-R, and U-R, we teach together, and we call them the rooster sounds because it's okay? They all make Again, easy to read, not easy to spell. O-R is another R-controlled vowel, makes the little word or. And then the last vowel, A, when it gets controlled, it turns into what we call the pirate sound, sort of like R, mateys, or like what we hear in K, R. Silent E words. These are quite tricky for children, but they do only make one sound. I've put silent E up there. I've put biter E up there. That's a term we sometimes use. Vowel E. And this is the pattern that turns cap. Once we add the E, now it becomes cape. So these two work together to make this turn into an A sound. Unless that E is there, we don't have an A sound. So the way we write it on their code cards is like this. The a small dash, which indicates there's space for one and only one consonant, and then an E. So that's why these code cards look like that. And we explain that quite carefully to the children. So these are simply A, E, I, O, and U. And we tell the students that this E is so powerful, right, that it can jump over and make the A say its name, or we say it jumps over and it bites it and makes it scream out its name. I've heard people say it's the power E, and it goes back and it makes that change to its long sound. It's so powerful, we can see it can even break apart an R-controlled vowel, right? That's an R-control, that's one of our roosters, her. And yet when that silent E comes on the end, it breaks it apart and makes it say E. And it is a silent E. This is not cape E at the back. Okay, so this last one down here, this is U, as in mule. So it sounds like you, but if you listen carefully, lots of times it actually turns into a little bit more of an oo sound. However, with most native speakers, if you teach it as you, it's really hard to say reyule. So our mouths just go in the right place. I think it's probably, I'm certain it's more difficult if it's English as a second language. Okay, so space for one consonant. And it is difficult to sort of see this pattern because we're now asking children to skip over a letter and look one further. Okay, I would also say don't teach too soon after you've been teaching your short vowels, because sometimes what we find is that children will start to default to this sound because it's easier, it's the name of the letter, right, than sticking with the short vowel sound. Okay. So now we're going to look at those vowel teams that make 2 or 3 sounds. And this is, I think, sometimes, again, where we start to say, oh, English is just, you know, it's just so crazy. It makes a whole bunch of different sounds. But let's take a look. So here's a phrase, eating bread is great. So if we look at, and each time there's this EA, EA, EA. Here it's making E, eating. Here it's making bread. And here it's making the sound A, ate. So it is making 3 sounds, but it's not just making any sound. All right. So again, it's complex, but it's not crazy. So we teach our kids that it makes E, and A. Whoops, I'm sorry, I'm going the wrong way here. To make it simpler, we at the clinic assign numbers to these so that to indicate this sound, EA, making E, we put a little 1 with it. And for this one, we'll put a little 2 with it. And this one, we put a little 3 with it. I would suggest that you teach these sounds for EA one by one. I wouldn't, unless you had a very strong child, say to them, these are the 3 sounds it makes. Let's work with all 3 together. But I would teach one after the other and maybe with a little bit of time in between for sure. Now, what you want to know is that the EA1, it actually happens in about 70% of words. So that happens a lot. And that's why we call it number 1, because that's the one we most want them to learn. EA2 occurs in about 25% of words, and EA3 occurs in 5% of words or less. And please know these numbers are not deeply researched, okay? But it gives you an idea of the proportions. So we want the children to learn these in order so that they go, what are the sounds that EA make? Ultimately, we'll say E, and A, so that when they come across an unknown word with one of these in it, first they're going to try this one because they've got a 70% chance of getting the word right. Then they try this one and they're up to 95% chance of having it right. And then thirdly, they try this one. Okay, so that's the purpose of the numbering and getting them to say them in order. And these little phrases helps the kids keep them in order when it's important. Okay, so let's take a quick look at these other ones that make two or three sounds. So this pattern, O, makes oo, like in moon, about 65% of the time, and which is really like a stomach punch, it's a very distinctive sound, about 35% of the time. So the two sounds for O are oo and and it's important that children learn to distinguish from upper, book. Okay, OW makes two sounds, like we see in plow, it's making ow, and in snow, it's making O. And these actually occur about 50-50, so you could do any order you'd like there. OU makes three different sounds. However, 80% of the time it's making ow, like in ouch and found. And the rest of the time it's either making an like in touch, or oo, like in soup or group. I and IE beside each other, it's either making sounds like in peas or pie, so E or I. And it's about 50-50. I sometimes just sort of say, sometimes you have to say the name of that letter, I, or it's saying the name of that letter, E. And again, some less frequent ones, EY says E, like in key, and A, like in they, and EI says E, like in ceiling, and A, like in vein. And you may come across certainly other pieces of this complex code that maybe someone has been teaching to your child or whatever, but I think most anything else that you find is going to be within this less frequent category, meaning it just doesn't occur in so many words. Okay, so three sounds Y makes as a vowel. So when Y is the first letter in the word, it's a consonant, and it makes the sound like in yellow. However, once it moves away from the first position, it becomes a vowel, and we know that, right? We say our vowels are A, E, I, O, U, and sometimes Y. So when Y is not the first letter in the word, it is a vowel, and then it makes three different sounds. It makes the sound I, like in cry, at the end of a really short little word, okay? This is then my, cry, buy, spy. At the end of a longer word, it makes E. And maybe I didn't say this, we show on our cards, we call it short dash Y. We draw a little short line and put the Y there to indicate that we want the I sound. We draw a longer line on the card and put the Y there, and that indicates the E sound, such as happy. This also picks up when Y is actually working as a suffix, like tip, E. And then finally, when Y is in the middle of a little short word, it makes the sound I. And that's because the Greeks didn't have an I and used Y for that sound. Units are another part we have to deal with. And units are sounds that we teach as a word family because they're not phonetic. Any word family that can be sounded out we do not teach as a unit. So at family, app family, those can be sounded out. The units that we teach have something about them that makes them irregular for sounding. Okay, and there's 4 of them here. Certainly you'll find more. This one is all, old, eind, like in kind, and ild, like in child. Now, here are 4 other units that we teach: ing, ang, ong, ung, as in sing, sang, song, sung. Okay. NG, you could teach as a piece of code. It's making a particular, it's making the second N sound that we have in English. I want you to, at home, say the word sin. Sin, say it twice. Sin, sin. Where is your tongue going for the N sound? Sin, up behind your teeth at the front. Now say sing, sing, sing. And you'll notice that your tongue is now going up at the back of your mouth, okay? So we have the n at the front of our mouth, and we have the at the back of our mouth. And these are both sounds for the letter, for an N sound. And that is one way to show it, but we just teach the whole thing as a unit. And along with these, then we also have the units ink, ank, onk, and unk. And in this case, just this is making the sound, aw, k, but it's just easier to teach the whole thing as a unit. Bossy W. This is a really sort of fun one to teach. W's, we just tell the kids a little story. We say, you know, W's are really bossy. And you know what it's like when someone's bossy around? They don't let you do what you want to do. They're really rude. And W's boss around some of the vowels and don't let them say the sound they're supposed to say. Okay? And this bossy W is actually the source of many of the words that we tend to consider irregular. But if you know about the concept of bossy W, then you'll see that they actually, yeah, they're actually fitting together. Okay, so we read these words: water, or want, water, wand, swamp, wasp. They should be want, water, wand, swamp, wasp, if we were actually using the ah sound in it. But what's happening? This A, which should be ah, is being turned into aw, Oscar, want, otter, ond, swamp, wasp. So when a W is right beside the A, it makes a wah sound instead of a wah sound. What sound does the QU make? It makes qua, qua. Again, there's a W within that sound, so it bosses the A around as well. Look at these words. Quality, quantity, squander, okay? Once again, it's going to the aw sound. I'm not suggesting you would be showing these to your young children, but I just wanted to show you it applies there as well. Okay. Now, it also bosses 2 of the R-controlled vowels around. And this is a lot of information. It's on your sheet, okay? I just want you to know that when you see W's beside certain things, that's what's happening. That's why we're getting this shift. These words, work, worry, world, worst, worm, right? Should be work, worry, world. If that was really, if this were being allowed to make its or sound, but it's not. W is bossing this around and consistently changing it to an sound, and that's what we hear. Work, worry, okay? What's happening here? here's our pirate sound, R, right? Does it get to go R? Do we say war? No, we say w, or. So it gets shifted to sound like this one. All right, it's on your sheet, but this will explain a lot of the words that we think are irregular. And again, Q-U-A-R, quarter and quarantine. Okay. C-E-I-Y. This was on the sheet from the first session, but I didn't really get much of a chance to address it, so I just wanted to take a moment now. The most frequent sound for a C is K, like in cat and cut and clap and crutch and attic, okay? However, if it's followed by an E, I, or Y, that's when it makes this S sound. So here, there's an E, there's an I, there's a Y, cell, city, cycle. It can happen at the ends of words. You see this? That E makes that C change into an S sound, fence. It's not just if it's a single E, R, Y, it might be one of these patterns here, okay? This again is changing into a S sound, exceed, because there's E's here. Same thing, there's E's here. And look at this. This is an R-controlled vowel, but it starts with an I. That does it as well. S, cuss. And you can see within this one word, here this C has been forced into a S sound because of the I, but this C is allowed to make its usual sound because it's by a U, so circus. Same thing with G's. The most frequent sound for G is like in gum, not giraffe. Okay, so teach gum first. But once again, if it's followed by an E, I, or Y, it will usually make a J sound. Not always, but usually. And again, you can see the examples there. Large. Why do we have to have an E at the end there? Because otherwise that G, that word would be larg without the E to make it into a J sound. Okay, so these were the 6 core activities that I talked about the first time in terms of what we want to be doing with your child. And what I'm going to do now is show that really what we're going to do is we're going to be now inserting this complex code just into this step, and I'll show you some reviews on those as well. I have to switch to my other camera now. I'm going to plug in, and I'm hoping that we're going to get my webcam on my desk, but please bear with me a moment if it doesn't all happen right away. I also have to probably share a screen again. So, all right.
Jan, just a reminder, it is 8:07. You wanted a reminder on the time.
Yep. Thank you. Yep. Nope. That's good. We might even be done on time. All right, so let me see.
Got the start video.
Yeah, I'm not seeing my camera here. Just a minute. Let me see if I can, because this is my...
We should stop sharing the screen. Did you do that?
Yep, I did. Just give me a second.
Sorry, everyone. We've been having some technical difficulties with her webcams. Okay, now we have...
Now you've got me, right?
Uh-huh.
And let me see if I can get it switched to my other one. It's been difficult. No, not yet, eh?
There we go.
Oh, good. Hooray. Okay. Thank you for your patience, everyone.
Okay.
Okay. So I just need to reorganize my... Okay. So The first thing I wanted to start with was just talking about those open and closed and open syllables. All right. And just briefly how we teach this concept, and it's a great concept. It's really useful for the kids. So this is the types of words that you learned how to teach your child to read it in the first video. Okay, where we've got the little short vowel in the middle. This guy's making eddy, eddy, okay, at. And at some point, I would have said to the child over the last number of weeks, yeah, we always call this eddy, because this is what's called a closed syllable. And what makes it closed is that you got one little vowel and there's a letter after it. Okay, it's like it's closing up that end of the word. So we call this closed. And if there's ever one or two consonants after these, then this guy has to make his little sound eh. He can't be making his long sound e. All right, so this is a closed syllable. And now I want to show you what it means about open syllables. So, and I teach it like this. It's just my little story that I've done. So what I do is I draw a hill and I put a word like met up at the top. And then I say to them, so what's this word? And they say met. And we say, yeah, it's a closed syllable, right? It's got a little guy at the end of it. So he's got to make his S sound. But what do you think would happen? What if that T ever fell right off the hill and fell down there and he wasn't there anymore? And now that E can look out over everywhere. You know what? If there isn't a letter closing him off, he isn't going to make his S sound anymore. He's going to scream out his name. He's going to go E because he can see way out there. And he makes his long sound. Okay? When the T was there, he was a closed syllable, had to make his short sound. Sorry, I realized my hand's in the way there. Once those drop off and the vowel is hanging out the end, it's called an open syllable because they're open to look out to the world, and now they scream out their name. Okay. You can do the same thing with a little word like, you can do it with sob, right? Closed, it makes aw. The bee falls off the hill. He opens up. What's the O going to scream out? It's going to scream out his name. Oh, I can look out. And it's a way to explain to children then these little words, so, he, me, okay? And I've listed them all in that phonics chart or that phonics information that I gave you. This is the reason why we can give those guys their long sound. And the converse is, you may have had a child who came to you and said, well, if this, they may have known, this is me, why isn't that me? Like, what makes it change? And it's just this concept of open and closed syllables. I'm hoping I'm keeping my hand, Jill, am I keeping my hand out of the way well enough there?
Yes, yes, fine, Jen.
All right, thank you. All right, so that's our open and closed syllables. Right. These are these 6 core activities that we talked about the first time that I'm hoping you've been doing with your child. I'm going to briefly go through those 2, and then I'm going to show you, I think I'll have time to show you with 2 different pieces of code how to bring them in. I'll show you how to bring in one of the vowel combinations that makes more than one sound, and I'll show you how to bring in the vowel E pattern. Okay, so code pack review. So I'm hoping that you've been successful working with your child and you're now doing something like this where you're going down, they're going s, t, z, x, z, right, through your consonants. They're now really good at their vowels. They're going aw. And what you say, what's the keyword? And they go Oscar. They're going ah, I, ah. Maybe your child isn't quite there yet, and when you put it down, they still need their tapping, their keyword. They're going udder, The digraphs. Okay, so you're doing that code pack review with them every time you're working with them. And then you're also asking them to spell some of those sounds. So you're saying to them, spell me ah, and they're writing on their paper an A. Spell me ch, and they're writing a CH for you. Spell me d, and they're writing a D for you, okay? Those are two really important parts. I'm also hoping that from having done that work on those, when we got down here again on the first video, I said it's a good idea if you can, after you've made up some little words for them on the code cards, to put them on little cards that you could use for review or playing games. So I'm also hoping that maybe you've got some little cards like this made up by now, that they're working on sounding out it and that and again, you'd be going over those, using them in different little game formats. As I said, an easy one is simply, you know, play snakes and ladders, and before it's your turn to move your piece, you just read one of your little cards there. Or if you make double sets, you can play Go Fish or whatever. So that's what I'm hoping you've been able to do in terms of review. So now if we're going to teach the new sound, and the sound I'm going to teach today is this one. I want to teach ow, and the first sound of ow, obviously. At this stage, I'd suggest that it's worthwhile to do a little bit of prep. And what I've prepped here is a list of some words that has this OU making ow in it, words like out and ouch and shout and loud, okay? And I've also made up just a few very simple sentences that use some of these words. I've posted the ones that I've made up on the website, but as I said, I think you'll find it really useful at this stage to make yourself a small little teaching aid like this. It doesn't have to be typed, you can do them by hand, all right? So what we're going to do is I want to get them, first of all, as we did with any of the other code, to listen for the sound. So I'm going to start off and say to my child, oh, we're going to learn a new sound today. Listen to these words. And already I'm using this list of words, okay? I'm going to say, I want you to listen to the beginning of these words and tell me what sound you hear there. Out, I'm reading off the page. Ouch, and I'm hoping they're going to come up with ow. You can also give them words where ow is in the middle of the words, and there's more of those. So alternatively, I might say, this time I want you to listen to the sound you hear in the middle of the word. So I'm going to be reading from my page. What do you hear in shout, loud, couch, mouth? And I'm hoping they're going to say ow. And they're going to say, ow, right. And look at that. That ow, we have to put two of the vowels beside each other to make the ow sound. That's pretty amazing, isn't it? And you know, the other thing that's amazing about this is that these two letters actually make other sounds than ow, but we're not going to learn about those today. The most important one is that they make ow. And I'm going to put a little one above it because that's the first sound we're going to learn for it. Okay, so this makes ow, like ouch. And if you're a better drawer than I am, you can draw some sort of hurt thumb on the side there, right? That's really painful, as a little reminder picture for ouch. Okay, I've been certain that they can hear it in words. I've shown them what it looks like. Now they have to practice printing it a little bit. Okay, so let's try and spell this one. And these are trickier than single letters, right? So And you can get them to write on whiteboards. You can get them to just do it on the desk is fine, just with their fingers, tracing, paper, whatever. Say, okay, so let's write that ourselves. So O, we have to write the letter O, we have to write the letter U side by side. O, U makes the sound ow. And we can put a little one above it to remind that, because we're going to learn another sound later. O, U makes ow. Okay. Now, back to our 6 core activities. I'm going to keep going back to these because it's just a very easy routine. So we've taught them the new sound. Now we want to read words with our code pack cards. Okay, so you've got this great big pack of code cards, but I'll tell you by this stage you're going to need to edit them a little bit because it's just too many to work with. But again, if you've made yourself a little list of words that you want to spell, you can then choose some code cards to simply put out. Okay, so based on the words that I figured out on my list, I'm just going to take some of these code cards that they have and put them out. And if you notice, I am for sure going to also put out the vowels that they've had, okay, because we need to keep reviewing those as we go along. Can you see that one up there? No. I'll maybe do this and put it there. Okay. So very simply, and again, you know, I've got my list of words here that I wrote before, so I can work off those. And I'm going to go like this, and I'm going to say, okay, read me this word. What does this make again? Ow, right? Out, out. Good work. What does that say now? And the child is going, out, shout. What does this say now? Loud, loud. If I wanted to bring in a little work with those blends, I could bring this one down here, couldn't I, right? And what have I got now? I've got loud. At some point, I'm not going to just use this one. I'm going to go back and throw in some of those for review, right? So this is loud. I'm going to say, oh, what does that say now, right? Keep them practicing with their other ones as well. So again, using the words that you figured out ahead of time, it's easier than trying to just wing it. Take a moment, do that bit of prep. You can have them read quite a few little words here on their word cards. Okay, back to this. What's the second thing that we do this? Then we have to spell words using the code pack. So this time it's your child's turn. You put everything back up here and you say to them, can you spell me the word mouth? And as we did in the first video, you want them to split it apart first, and we use our fingers, right? Ow. And hopefully your child will be able to do that, but you're going to help them as much as they need so they get it right. Ow. And we're going in the direction that we read. We don't want to be going ow, because we don't read in that direction, okay? So get the fingers going up in the direction that we read. Ow. Okay. And then your child is doing this. There's your ow. Which one's going to make ow? This one. Ow. Which one of these was our sound? This one. All right. And again, you just get them to spell a few words for you. Back to this. Okay, we did reading words. We just finished spelling words with your code pack card, and it's really a subsection of them. Otherwise, you'll just have way too many cards around. And then finally, read and spell words on paper. And look at this, because we prepped this little bit ahead of time, we have some words here to work with. Okay. And what's tricky about this, and I'm just going to move it down. What's tricky for students in reading these is, of course, that they now have to, I guess I'll stand it up a little bit, it might be easier to see, is that they have to identify that these two go together. Because up until now, we've been saying, say each sound. And they might go, t, right? So they have to go, oh, there it is. That's the pattern that goes together. That's ow, out. So we find it really useful to have them do a lot of this circling. We'll say, okay, look in this word. Can you find an ow in this? And they go, oh, there it is. What sound does it make? I say to them, they say, ow. Good, let's read the word, ouch. Next one, can you find an ow in this word? They look down through there. Oh, now I see it. There it is. O and U, making ow. And this is training their eyes to be able to pick those out and remember that it's the OU sound. So it is important and it's useful. That's what you'll use this for afterwards, is to have them go through and circle it. If your child is strong enough that they might be able to do a little sentence, it's the same thing. Look through here, find your ows. Can you find those? There's one, ow, right? Oh, there's another one, ow. Is another one there? Oh yeah, ow. Okay, now let's read it. Those are all ows. Shout, out, ooh, out, loud, shout out loud. Okay. So we've read on paper and we've done this circling, which is really important. And then we want them to do this spelling on, I say on paper, on whiteboard, whatever, but not just with the cards if we can. And again, this goes back to what we would have shown in the first video. I'm going to use the words again off that list. If the word is shout, what do they do first? They break it. Shout, sh, out. Oh, I've got 3 sounds. And you might support them by putting down lines for it. They might be able to do it themselves, doesn't matter. So what are we writing here? Shh. What do we write here? That ow sound. Now, do they still remember what it is? Do they have to look back at their card? Do they need a little reminder? Hopefully they don't. They're writing you OU. And what's the last sound in shout? T. Okay. And again, you've got a selection from words because you prepped a few. Finally, as I said, if you can, at the end of the lesson, it's always good to transfer a few of the words they've been working with onto little cards. Okay, it's a quick way to let you do some other review. As I said, if you make doubles, you can play concentration by putting them down, or you can play Go Fish, or just use them in different games. Okay. So with the patterns that make more than one, you acknowledge right up front it will make another sound, okay? But you don't have to deal with it right away. You just say, oh, we'll talk about that one later. Okay.
Great, Jan. It's about 8:30. You were
all right.
another reminder.
I'm going to show you I-E and we're good to go. All right. So vowel E. This is the pattern that I'm going to want to teach them about. I want to teach them about what's happening to I when there's a silent E with it. If your child is strong, you could show for each of the vowels that it does the same in one lesson. Typically, our students are weaker. We would start with just one. In this case, I don't start with having them listen for the sound. So I don't say, oh, listen for the sound in like and mic and bike and trike. I take a little different approach, and I'll show you what that is. So what I build off of is I give them a word like this, and I'll just write it on something, and they can read that, and they're going to tell me it's thin, right? And that's making it sound. I'm going to say, yeah, it does. I'm going to show you something really neat. You know what? E is a very powerful letter. And when he comes at the end of a word like this, and it depends what story you want to tell, if it's powerful or biting, do you know what he does? He hops back right over here and he bites. I sometimes say he bites that I. And he doesn't say I anymore. He starts to go, ay, 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 right? Ay, 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 ay. He's biting me. And sometimes I put little teeth on him there, right? So this guy jumps over and bites that, and he says, I. So we haven't got fin anymore. What have we got? Now he's saying I. Now he doesn't say anything. It's not I-n. He's quiet. All he's doing is he's biting that guy. If you don't like the biting analogy, some people call him a power E, and he powers over. You know, he's got a lot of power there. You can also just sort of say he silently goes over and makes that guy say his name, whatever. Let's look at another word, see what happens again, right? Oh, what's this word? Should be written with a capital, right? Tim, person's name. Let's see what happens when the E comes on him there, this guy. So there he is. What's he gonna do? He's gonna leap over here and bite him. What's that? What's he gonna do now? What sound is he gonna make? He's gonna go, ay, 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 ay. Let's read it now. Time. And does he say anything when we get to the end? No, he's just busy biting that guy. All right. And it would be the same explanation with all of the other vowels in there. Okay, so that's how I tend to introduce that. And then what I say is, so you know what it's going to look like on your card? Your card is going to look like this. Okay? And we want to put, and I draw this on at the time, I'll bring the card out like this, and I'm going to say, so there's the I. Here's a space for one vowel. You see how there's a consonant. You see how there's always one letter in there? And then here's this E who's biting. And at this point, then I usually do something like this. And I make some little teeth or whatever. Who's biting that I back there. And then because it's a bit of an odd one to do, I'll just say to the student, okay, so let's try and write this. So how are we going to write this? We write it like this. We write an I, and then we put a little line. That's a dash. We call that a dash, and that's a E, right? And that's for one single consonant, and this guy goes back and bites him and makes him scream out his name, I. Okay, so that's how I get around to showing them what their card is going to look like and the sound that I want for it. Now, being boring, okay, I've taught the sound. I'm going to read words with the code pack cards. For this one, I would suggest that you, again, you're going to take you're going to make up whoops, sorry myself here. I've made up a list of words that have this I silent E pattern. Okay, so you know you've got something to work with here. You've chosen a subset of your cards that will help to build words. And you also need to make just a few tiny little letters, which are going to be the ones that we stick in here, okay? And if you want, before you make whole words, you can just practice with your child and say, look, so this is I, and you see just one little letter goes in there. So how would we read that if that were in there? It would be I'm, like in the word I'm, okay? All right, let me put another one in there. Let me put, what would this be? If we put a in there. So we have book. What's this making? I. And this is supposed to be your child doing this reading. Okay, you can model a couple. And then what you're hoping is that then I say, okay, so now I'm going to change this. What is it now? It was bite, but look, and I'm putting a different sound in there. What's it going to be this time? And they read it. B-I-T. Oh, now it's bite. Let me change this card here. What have we got now? Oh, let's try this one. The child goes, bite. Okay, so this is how you read different words on tiles, and then spelling. It just gets to be their time. Okay, can you build me the word line? Line. L-I-N. Ooh, that's our first. This is our I. What one do we need to put in here to make it go line? That one. Okay. All right. So they've read words with code pack. They can spell the words with these code pack cards, and now we're going to look at it on paper. So we get out this one, and this time, instead of circling, what we really want the kids to do is to, we call it hooking up the vowel, okay, doing the hookups. Because with this, we no longer want them to read across as we have, k, it, we're actually saying, you have to look one letter further to know that that one is part of this pattern. And that's a pretty big deal. So we would say, look and see if there's any biters here. And if you see a biter, then you hook it up that way, okay? You show that it's there. And when they do that, then they're going to say to us, so what sound is this making? I. Now read me the word kite. Okay, hook it up again. Is there a biter here? Yes. Oh, what sound is that letter making? I. B-I-T. Oh, is there one here? Yeah, hook it up. Yeah, B-I-K. Because what you don't want is for them to read across a word and just go in, shin, shine, right? We have to just give them this practice of noticing when this pattern is occurring, and it is requiring that they skip over a letter and look one further, something we have not been asking them to do. So it's really quite a difficult pattern for kids to learn to read. And again, there's just a few little sentences that I made up at the bottom. If your child is strong enough to deal with that many words, you can have them do it in a sentence as well. When I want them to spell with these words, it's a little different process as well. Okay. So again, if they're going to spell the word fine, I want them to break it as always. I. So there's going to be 3 lines, right? I. And they do the. When they say the I, they have to show me that there's an E there. Because to just put an I there, when you know there's going to be another letter, which is going to make it a closed syllable, that could not say I, right? So I, they complete the whole pattern, and then they write their N. So if it was mile, again, I, O, 3 sounds. I, O, I, oh, it's got that biter on it. Oh, okay. Eventually, yes, the kids will come to the stage where mile, they will remember to put the E on. But otherwise, if you don't, you run into a big difficulty that they're going to go, I, O, go, I, O, right? I, because they've said it, O, and say, I'm done. All right, so that's the purpose of having them connect on through to that one. At least in some beginning stages to practice for a while. And then once again, right, I'm hoping you'll have made up some nice little word cards that you can use, and more than that, and in a variety of ways and games, just to keep them reading and reviewing these patterns. So I said, sometimes with some students, you might find after you've done the I-E really carefully, you can bring in 2 other patterns. You could show them A-E and O-E at the same time, or all of the others. And some students or some children really need to go through just one at a time, very slowly. Okay, last thing I'm going to leave you with here is possible resources to help you out with this work. I think I referred to these books before, these Explode the Code series. It is tricky to always be finding materials that will have these different little patterns in them in a nice, clean way. And this series the first book is just those little CBC words. The second book is actually full of blends, which is great. When you get up into this book 3, then they will have some lessons with this vowel E, but they do put them all together at once. So you have to wait a little bit for those, but look at this, right? Here they've done a lesson specifically just on this EE pattern, and here they've given you lots of words then that your child can go through and circle up the E and say it before they read it. Here's another one where they do EA, right? Making E, and again, you're getting some text that can further support the work that you've done. And they move through a number of other patterns, OA, AI, and so forth in quite a nice way. That resource Jill has posted on the website as well. That's it. Yeah, I think if there's any questions.
Great. Yeah.
Any questions?
Yeah, if anyone has any questions, they can post them in the Q&A. We have one question.
Yes.
For you. I'm not sure you'll have an answer, but right off the top, but can you please tell us the source for the frequency percentages on the vowel teams?
Oh, no. Yeah, that was my caveat. That is sort of over my thumb. That is not a precise source, okay? That comes from, you know, me having read a number of different places that someone sort of said, oh, it's kind of this much and kind of that much.
Yes. Yeah, I think I've seen numbers and they differ depending on, of course, how they're counting words, which is very challenging. We know the book, the ABCs and all their tricks. Jan, I guess if we go off the share screen.
You'll stop seeing my desk?
We might not see you. Yeah, I'm not sure what's going to happen, what we're going to see from your computer. We're going to see a big Jan McLean without any. Am
I off? Is that good?
Yeah. You know what? Yeah. I'll go on so that somebody can see somebody. Let me. Yeah, I know. I just happened to go to my bookshelf and pull a couple of books out. I know this book has some frequencies that give you a sense of the relative frequency. It doesn't have percentages, and it gives you actually word lists too.
Oh, that's great.
Let's see of
that's great. There's a great resource.
Yeah. And also, this one, The American Way of Spelling, has some discussion about it as well.
Yeah. I think I think in broad strokes, what you're seeing there is not far off, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And whether
I think so. Yeah. Certainly the order of. Whether it's 70 or 75, certainly the order of frequency is accurate, I would say. We have another question here. Do you like the recipe for reading program resources? Which is funny because I just happened to pull that out thinking that book might have those numbers. Yeah. This is an old copy.
Yep. They also move through this sort of materials in a progressive fashion. That is another good resource. And you'll see that they address different little vowel teams there as well. So Recipe for Reading is another good resource that you could use.
It actually also, has some word lists, etc. to work with. This is an old copy, so it doesn't seem to be focusing on it, but I think you get the idea. It has a little bit of handwriting material in it, but they're very short word lists. I wouldn't say it's totally comprehensive, but it's a great start, for the initial part of this type of a program.
Yeah, and as I said, if you're working with a very young child, you don't need so many words anyway, right? By the time
exactly.
you move your cards around, you've come up with some. It's when you get into older children, that's where they need more volume, and you certainly need more materials.
Right, right. We have any other questions? I don't see any popping up. We'll keep an eye on the questions while I wrap up a couple things after thanking Jan enormously for all the work you've done in these last 2 videos and webinars. Very much appreciated. We've had great feedback on these videos, and I know the first one has over 800 views on YouTube. So we're trying to get this kind of help out to people. So I think it's just a great help, Jan. And thank you for all the time you've put into doing these.
Exactly.
I just would like to also mention, in terms of Onbida, we hope to offer other webinars this year. So check back to the website, and or if you become a member, you'll get a newsletter and get the first post about that. But check our website about our webinar schedule for upcoming this year. We are launching a new online professional directory next week, where individuals, clinics, and schools who support children with dyslexia can advertise their services, such as tutors, reading specialists, speech language pathologists, psychologists. So if you're a professional working in this area, we encourage you to become a member, and you get a free listing on that directory. This summer, we also hope to again offer the Project Read's sentence structure course, Framing Your Thoughts. It's a 6-hour online webinar course. We've had very good feedback on that. We've offered it twice in the last year. So I've talked to the people at Project Read, and they're keen that we do this again this summer. So we're happy to do that. And also, we are hoping to offer the sequel to that course called Writing Paragraphs, also an online webinar course. Again, we'll post information about that on the website. I think I've got everything. I guess I'd just like to say I would like to emphasize that our organization is completely run by volunteers, and I hope you consider supporting the work of Onbida by becoming a member, making a donation, or offering to volunteer. And if you go to our website, click on Take Action on the website menu, and you can see how to get involved in either of those, any of those. Jan, we'll just jump quickly. There are 2 more questions, so we can quickly fit these in. One is, what level of Explode the Code would you use when at the morphology level? That's an interesting question.
I think there is some morphology, as in terms of suffixing. I believe the 8th booklet does have some suffixes in there.
Yes.
I don't think it's in 7. It's 8, isn't it? Yeah. Now
I'm trying to remember.
I don't know that I don't think they do roots unless things have changed. They haven't gone that
basis, you mean? Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I think if you Google Explode the Code, Scope, and Sequence, you'll come up with that. I wouldn't say it's a strong morphology
no.
program at all.
It's not. But it would touch on a few. But if you're looking for, all of the Latin roots and prefixes, it's not strong.
Yeah. The other question is, how do you know when to move on to a new word or sound? Does the child need to be able to do the learned sound without making mistakes or slip-ups? It's a good question.
Yeah, I think this is always a little bit, I think you certainly want, well, Jill chime in, close to 90%, correctness on this, so that if you're showing them a piece of code and they're not telling you the right answer for it, or if the issue is that they can tell you the right answer for it, but maybe they can't spell it for you,
Certainly, I think spelling is more challenging than reading.
Yeah, that will sometimes lag. So sometimes we'll move on if they can read it for us. Yeah, I don't know if I'm being very definite about it or not. Sometimes a piece of code is particularly difficult for a child. And if they seem really stuck, I have sometimes just put that aside and tried something else, because sometimes something else goes a little bit easier and then you come back to it. Okay. Yeah. I don't know if I answered that or not.
Yeah, well, I think it is judgment, isn't it? How frustrated the child might be.
Yeah, there's no sense frustrating a child over
or
something, right?
But definitely circling back to it.
Yes.
Yeah, it's important. Great. I think we should wrap it up. It's just a
Yeah,
few.
and I'm happy if people email me. I don't mind questions that way.
Yes, your email, I guess, is jan@thereadingclinic.com or .org?
.ca.
.ca, sorry.
Yep.
Okay, sorry, we don't have that up here, and we're having some camera difficulties on Jan's
It's on
laptop,
the presentation.
but it's on the presentation front page. Yeah, okay. Okay, thanks everyone. Really appreciate it again, Jan, and thanks everyone for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Okay, take care.
Bye.